You're more than welcome to stay if you'd like. I'm not going to be offended.
I mean, I like this one-to-one talk, but once someone can people join in,
we got a couple people online. I'm gonna wait like 2 minutes and then we're gonna go ahead and get started. Hopefully you guys can see my screen and we'll get started soon. All right, you guys. Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. This meeting is gonna be recorded and I'm gonna upload it online. Hopefully you can hear me and see that I'm talking. If you have any questions, just pipe up, unmute the mic, and I'll be more than happy to talk to them about you. I'm gonna tell you this right now. My name is, I'll tell you a little bit about myself first. So my name is Patrick. I am a junior here at Tech, studying computer science, like a lot of you. And I've been involved with hackathons since my freshman year of high school. I've been organizing hackathons since freshman year of high school. This is going to be my 7th year of organizing events. This is my 2nd time as the director of an event. The first time was in high school, which is where this PowerPoint's from. So it is kind of the 2nd time I'm getting to do this talk, and I'm pretty excited to do it. So basically, this talk is just going to give a rundown of what my organization looks like, some milestones you want to keep in mind when you're trying to run a hackathon, and some kind of key things to look out for, especially trying to navigate a hybrid like we are this year. My email is not the one that's crossed out. It's the one that's appended to the side. That's my old high school email. You email me there at the other one. I can still get it, but it'll be kind of weird. But let's go ahead and get started. So let's start. So we're talking a little about organizational structure and timeline first and foremost. We'll start with the general timeline. So about 5 to 8 months out is when you want to start picking your venue. For us at Virginia Tech, it's a little difficult to do that because you can't confirm venues outside of the semester. So basically you have to have everything lined up for the first day of the semester and get ready to roll. But you want to know, before that day comes around the 5-month period, you want to know what kind of size event you want to run, how much that's going to cost to run an event that size, and also figure out kind of where you're going to have it, either on campus or as a hotel ballroom or in a basketball stadium or wherever you're going to do it. This is the time where you figure those kind of details out. You do a little scouting around campus, talk to your school administrators about what's possible for you and your organization. Once you kind of get 4 to 5 months out, and this is really more of like a 3 to 5 month out time to time period, you want to start developing the brand of your event, I like to call it. So that includes picking your theme. For us, like you guys, you can see it's like the mountains. That's kind of our theme. We have like a yak mascot, those sorts of things. You want to get those things designed about 4 to 5 months out so you can use them in your branding from the get-go. One of the things that really helps you stand out when you're emailing sponsors is branded, like it's having a unique brand that you can differentiate from other events. This is also the period where you want to build a contact list of sponsors. You want to be building out the people you want to reach out to, the kinds of companies you want to reach out to. It's also the time where if you want to become an MLH member event, this is when you want to kind of start that process of becoming a member event, because sometimes that does take a little bit to get done. But this is, again, kind of that 3 to 5 month time period. Finally, you kind of want to start brainstorming. This is also a great time to start reaching out to other clubs at your school. Like, for example, we had the blockchain at DT club do a workshop on blockchain. We had Super Smash Brothers club do a UX event with a Smash tournament. So really having the opportunity to include other student organizations is a great way to drive up registration numbers. It's also a great way to get involved within your community and to build those relationships across clubs. So about in the 1 to 2 month time frame is when you want to start. This is when you start hammering things down. The 3 to 5 month is when you're kind of doing the brainstorming, the ideas are kind of flowing. 1 to 2 months out is when you want to start nailing things down. You want to figure out how much money you need to run your event successfully. You want to get quotes for your food. If you're doing an in-person event, you want to get quote for any services you're going to use. You're going to get rent tables out. You're going to rent out a tent. You're going to rent out a building. How much is that going to cost? How much is food going to cost? How much is swag like badges or t-shirts or stickers, all that kind of stuff. Try to start to figure out how much those things are going to be, because that's going to impact how aggressively you need to reach out to sponsors. During this 1 to 2 month time period is when you should really be aggressively marketing your event to sponsors. You should be sending out probably 5 emails a day, maybe to sponsors, whoever your sponsorship lead is, just continuing to reach out to contacts, trying to find something other than that generic email they have at the bottom of their website. Finding a personal contact, maybe somebody's uncle or something, or aunt who works at a company, is 10 times as powerful as that basic email address that they have in general. It's a lot easier to connect with a person than it is with a machine. So I really recommend, if you can get a personal contact, that's a great way to help develop sponsorship. Other things, like I mentioned, this is kind of when you want to finalize things. You want to open up your registration. If you notice, for VT Hacks, we had a pre-registration period, almost like that 5 months out, where people get information. And then about a month and a half out, we open actual registration so people could sign up for the event for real. And then we also finished our website. We had all the graphics. We updated it from last year. If you recognize, we put the moon up there, changed some of the FAQ around, really get your page looking pretty so that when you direct people to it, they're excited by it and they want to be at your event because they see how cool it looks and they want to be a part of that. You want to finalize where you're getting your food from and also your emergency plan. At this point, you should have your budget, you should have your venue lined up and ready to roll, and get confirmation from your school or whoever that you have the venue for that time. And then once you have that venue, you have to figure out what could go wrong and how you're going to handle it. A tornado, if you're in Kansas, a tornado sweeps through. What are you going to do with their hackers during that time period? You run out of food. What are you going to do? You have too much food. What are you going to do? You run out of swag. All the kind of contingency plans, the what ifs, are this is where you can kind of start to think about those, along with finalizing where you're going to get your food from. I'd recommend picking a place for every meal, however long your event's going to be. For us, we started on Friday and on Sunday, so we have to do 2 dinners, 2 lunches, 2 breakfasts, and that's just how the way that works. Makes the numbers kind of easy in that regard. But finalize where you're going to get it from, and then have a backup option for each meal type. So we have a backup breakfast location, we have a backup lunch option, and a backup dinner option that we can reach out to in case something falls through like a week out. We know we already have a quote in place. We can just run with the other quote right away. And then once you get within a month is when kind of crunch times happens. This is where things start to come together. All those different components that you've had kind of swirling around are going to come together. This is where you're going to want to start ordering things. So your different pieces of swag, for us, like quarter zips, t-shirts, badges, these kind of things you want to do like 2 to 3 weeks out. Speaking from experience, ordering things 1 week out is very tricky for places to do, and you're going to spend a lot of money on rush shipping. You really want to order things, especially for in-person events, like 2 weeks out is kind of that golden period. Once you get an idea of how many people are going to show up and you get a general distribution of shirt sizes, especially t-shirts, you can just send it and order shirts. And in the worst case scenario that you run out of shirts, you can always send people out in the mail later with them. If you're an MLH event with MLH fulfillment, or with whatever brand t-shirt company you use, they have some sort of fulfillment option for themselves. You want to make sure that any kind of diet for in-person event, I'm going to be kind of talking about like in-person stuff, but it also applies to virtual, just like the food and like in-person logistics want to apply. You want to reach out to special cases. You want to make sure that people who have accommodations can have those, they can feel welcome and they can feel like they are still a part of the community. So diets, whether that be dietary restrictions or like an impairment in some way that prevents them from integrating fully into Discord or some other system, making sure that those people feel welcome and that they feel like they're a part of the community, even despite the special accommodations they might need. Within this 2-week period, you're going to want your sponsors to be signed. You want their money in your bank account, like 3 weeks out, if you can. 2 to 3 weeks. If it's not in there by 2 weeks, you kind of should start worrying and really be aggressively following up with them every single day, almost, or every other day until they put that money in your bank account. Because once they have the signed agreement, you really need that money on hand to be able to spend for the stuff. Finally, you want to you want to finalize everything. You want your schedule set. If you can have your schedule set a week and a half out, that is ideal, because then you can start advertising it to people and you can use it as a selling point for your event. Finally, We did this the Sunday before our event. We came into the room I'm in now, Torgerson 1020, and we did a full run through of the event from set up to tear down. Went through the whole thing. It took about an hour, and we said where everybody is going to be at every moment of the event. If there's an event happening, who's in charge, who's responsible, what kind of things do we need, what's the contingency plan if things go wrong, and being able to handle adversity when we hit it. So I just viewed a lot in the timeline. Does anybody have any questions about the timeline? Again, this isn't like a hard set fast thing by any means, but this is just kind of my recommendation from doing this for 7 years at this point and kind of seeing what preserves your sanity the best as an organizer. Alrighty, I'll keep moving then. So these are some of the positions we're going to have. I said we're going to talk about organizational structure. These are some of the positions you're going to have within your team. This is going to make your life easier. Having subordinates who then delegate to other subordinates makes your life as an organizer a lot easier. It gives you the ability to focus on the more high-level things. I don't know how many of you have taken like a management class, but basically your role, if you are the executive director, your role is to make sure other people are doing their things, not necessarily to be doing things yourself. Because your time, because you're aware of everything that's going on, all the pieces, your time is by nature more valuable than the person who is specifically only working on the website. And that's just the fact. And that's just the reality of how the organization is structured. As executive director, your time is valuable. So you shouldn't be spending it doing the jobs of people who are kind of on the more disparate parts of that kind of hierarchy. If you don't want to use a hierarchical structure, I've seen it work well, but especially with a hackathon, it seems to work well. It seems to lend itself to a divisional approach in terms of an organization. The executive director not only has to make sure all the pieces are working together, you have to make sure that the pieces exist to begin with. You really want to make sure your team meshes and learns how to communicate with one another, because the worst thing that can happen is that each compartment kind of just shuts down and only talks to themselves. And the only way that they can talk to each other is through you, because that means that all of your time is going to be spent saying, oh, social media wants to tell graphics this. So instead of social media telling graphics that, social media tells you and you tell graphics, and it just complicates the chain and makes things a nightmare for you. Really, your job is to be there for everybody, and your job is to communicate information that is almost more universal in a sense. Really, and also another critical role is being the motivator. You are there to make sure people stay on task, that they have the resources they need to succeed, and that also they stick around. I'll tell you from personal experience, you're going to have turnover in your organizational team. I think at the beginning of the semester, we started with 20 organizers, and by the time of yesterday, we had 16. So we had 4 people drop off throughout the course of the year, and that's okay, because really you want to make sure that the people who are involved are motivated and they're there because they want to be there. And the way you demonstrate that is show that you appreciate their efforts. The worst thing that you can do is just kind of act like everybody's beneath you, because really you're not, despite being like levels and that sort of thing. It's really not about that. It's more about you being able to see what's going on and doing all those things. So in terms of motivation, Adam asked about what keeps your team motivated throughout time. I think the easiest thing is to get them to get to know each other. We had kind of right at the beginning of the year, we had like a welcome event. We went to a local pizza place and we just talked. We just hung out. We talked about what we wanted to get out of the event, everything like that. We talked about those different things and just got to know each other, because it's a lot easier to work with your friends than it is to work with strangers. So really make the team, the organization, like you want to be friends with everybody. I mean, you're not going to be best friends ever with everyone, but really being friends with the people on the team makes life infinitely easier. So that's kind of the executive director position. Your job is to make sure other people are doing their job. That's the way I put it. I think next up is kind of logistics and UX. Some people split this out into 2 different categories. Some people keep it together. For my event, we had it split up into 2 different things. Logistics is more of like the venue side of things, and UX is more the workshops and events that hackers themselves are going to be doing. This kind of position is making sure all merchandise and events get to the event. And we actually have an event site to begin with, like you have a place to be and to do things. It's pretty important, obviously, for an in-person event. A virtual event, your logistics lead might not be securing a venue, but they're going to be in charge of your Discord server or your Slack or whatever. And they're going to be making sure that things run smoothly and that you're able to focus on making a great event, not Discord not working and you can't figure out why with roles or permissions and that sort of thing. This logistics is in charge of ordering your swag, communicating with suppliers for things like for our event keychains or stickers or that sort of stuff, making sure that you have accurate quotes and you have an updated budget that makes sure that you're not going to be spending more money than you have and have to go into debt, because nobody wants to go into debt because debt stinks. On the UX half of things, you want to focus on making the best experience for hackers that you can. You want to pick workshops that are exciting, that will be a great opportunity for them to learn and to grow and to just discover new things and discover maybe a passion that they didn't know they had. There's nothing more, I guess, fulfilling than seeing someone start an event who's never touched a line of code and by the end have a project that they're proud of that they can show off and they can talk about all the things they learned. And logistics is really at the heart of that, especially for beginners. We have a question, yes.
What happens if you forget to edit the spreadsheets that you actually think you're going to over budget?
That's why you save money for previous years, but that ties in. So if you can't hear on Zoom, the question was about what happens if you suddenly are in a deficit that you didn't realize you were in. You have a surprise cost that comes up. You have something, an expense that you didn't expect happen. So we talked earlier about contingency plans, emergency plans. One of those is kind of a cut list, is what I like to call a cut list. Basically, you have a list of things and say, okay, if this amount of money disappears, these are the things that we can lose and still have an event. Like if we are suddenly down $2,000, maybe a piece of swag that we were going to send out to participants, we're not going to send that out anymore because we're still sending out t-shirts and everything else to groups of hackers. And it was just kind of an icing on the cake thing. And it's more important for us to be financially solvent than it is to go into debt to send out rubber ducks or something like that. So having as a part of contingency plans, you want to be able to plan what happens if you don't have enough money. And that'll tie in with sponsorship later. Thank you, Andrew. Adam asks, what kind of tech talks have historically been successful? This is definitely an interesting question because it really does depend on your audience. If you have a group of beginners, the intro to Python, intro to JavaScript, intro to web development, like kind of tech talk workshops will be flooded. If you have an advanced crowd that's used to doing deep machine learning and doing all kinds of fun microservice stuff, they're not going to go to an intro to Python or intro to JavaScript website or workshop because they already know it. So it's really about kind of reading the demographic that you're trying to reach. And that ties into your advertising, that ties into everything that you do, how you present yourself as an event, whether you present yourself as a welcoming event for beginners or whether you present yourself as a prestigious event for the best of the best. It depends. That's what's going to depend how successful your tech talks are. But in general, some topics I've seen that are always successful are machine learning, artificial intelligence. Everybody's interested in it. Everybody wants to learn more about it. It's super cool. There are some really, really easy introductions that people can use to that. And it's always going to be cool to include because most often you're going to have a price category related to it like we do with related to AI and machine learning. Another one, blockchain is the new big thing. Everybody wants to learn about it. Everybody wants to learn how to make an NFT, all that fun stuff. Everybody wants to mint a new coin. So picking those hot button kind of tech talks are always great. And then finally, I think the third category that's really successful is related to internship and careers. Things like technical interview prep, what to expect in your first 6 months as a software engineer. How do I get an internship in college? What should I be doing when I'm not in class? Those sorts of things are all critically important to being a software engineer. It's not just about how well you can code, it's how well you can present yourself. Soft skills are half the battle, if not more, in terms of getting a job. So hackers are always going to be interested in learning those skills from an event, especially from people who have been in the industry a long time and can speak to say, when I'm interviewing someone, these are the things I look for. So that's a great talk for a sponsor to have. And that kind of wraps up, I guess, logistics and UX. Does anybody have any questions about those two areas? Alrighty. Moving on to the webmaster. Webmaster or web dev, as I call it, it's basically to make sure that people know you exist and that they can be sure that you exist. They're critical to your event, I guess, really existing, especially in a digital space. They are the go-to person to make sure that people can get to the resources they need when they need them. For example, we have our regular homepage, which has a bunch of great information on it about what our event is. But for people who are at our event and currently in like hacking at our event, we have a different website. We have our live site, which hopefully you've visited, which is a great tool to be able to view our schedule, look at all the sponsors we have, the prize categories that we have, all the information centralized in a place that they can access whenever they need to and be able to utilize that information to the best of their ability. The webmaster, their job is not easy because, you know, it's building a website and who wants to deal with JavaScript all day? Yuck. But it's something that it's really critical. Having a nice looking website can be the make or break between somebody registering. So if you have some cool JavaScript library that'll do a cool transition or something as the thing opened up, even if it's a really like it just make your website attract people to your event. Your website should be additive to your registration. It shouldn't be a neutral or detraction. It should fit your theme. It should fit kind of the vibe you're trying to present with your event, especially like the different sections that you have, and also just the differentiation between the different types of websites you might have during your event. Tied into that is your social media guru, or this is your PR person. This is the person that lets people know that your event exists. You're going to want to be tapped into all the big social media networks. I mean, your Twitter, your Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. And really the biggest thing here is to have a planning schedule. I know PR often works really closely with graphics in terms of creating things to put up on social media. If you followed our Twitter or our Facebook, you could see the kind of things we were posting leading up to the event. We had sneak peeks on workshops. We had sneak peeks on our keynote speaker, all those kinds of things that get people excited to come to your event. Because ultimately that's the goal of the social media department or your PR department, is to get people excited to come to your event and also for them to know that your event exists, especially when you're trying to market to people who don't go to your school, who aren't going to be able to see flyers that you hung up in this computer science building. The social media, especially now, is more important than ever. They can reach out to other events. Like we reached out to Cypher. They're super cool. They're super cool folks from William and Mary. About doing cross promotion. You can talk to other events. We work with Who Hacks. We work with Patriot Hacks, which by the way, both of those are coming up in March. You should go to both of those. Who Hacks, Cypher, all three of them, and Patriot Hacks, all three awesome events. And they helped us promote them, and we promote, and they promoted us, we promote them. It's kind of a scratch your back, you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of situation. So reach out to other events. We're the hackathons are a community for a reason. It's not just kind of a platitude. So utilize those connections, utilize the people that you meet when you go to hackathons, when you're trying to run the event yourself. And yes, Adam, thank you. We do get very good back scratches. So kind of tying into social media is graphics. So as you can see, I'm wearing my lovely quarter zip with our awesome logo. The badges all have our logo on them. You can see things are thematically tied together. And that's really the role of graphics, is to kind of stitch all the different pieces that you have in your event and make them whole. Have a cohesive theme, have a cohesive feel to your event, and make swag that people want to wear. Because the more people wear your stuff after the event, that's free advertisement for you. Your t-shirt, you should think of your like swag and stuff. It's not only great for the people who show up, it's free advertisement for next year. Because somebody sees, hey, that's a sick shirt. I wonder where they got that. They look at your website. If you got your webmaster has his stuff together, you got a cool website up there. Oh, wow, it's coming up in a month. I'm gonna register because I want a cool shirt too. And even if it's just, I want a cool shirt, getting somebody to register, that's just enough to get your foot in the door, and then you can get them hooked with the cool tech talks, and that's when logistics and UX starts to come in. So graphics is the glue that ties all the pieces together and gets people to show up to your event. Finally, last but certainly not least is sponsorship. Sponsorship, make sure you have money to exist, and make sure that you're not going to be taking out very large loans to have an event where you're giving stuff away for free. Sponsorship is responsible for spamming emails like no tomorrow to every company under the sun. Like I mentioned earlier, getting personal contacts is great. It makes your life a lot easier, and it makes making those connections a lot faster. They're also responsible for making sure that sponsors know exactly what they're getting. Things like having things like a tier list in terms of sponsorship levels. things that make it very clear the value that a company will get out of your event. So before I keep talking about sponsors, I'm going to switch to the next slide and talk about contacting them. Really, you want to find sponsors that fit your event. You want to find sponsors that kind of align with the values of your event. Like ours, for example, we're kind of a more beginner focused event, but we're also for college kids who are looking for internships. So the kind of companies we brought in, like Paraton, Mantech, and Capital One, they are looking for people to hire. So they kind of fit our event in terms of our scope and our style. That's what's really important. You want to send out personalized emails. You don't just want to say, dear company, please give us money. Like you want to talk about what value they're going to get by giving you money. Talk about resume books. Talk about one-on-one personal interactions with hackers. Talk about being able to see people demonstrate their skills in a time pressure environment. All things that are very, very important for a future employee. Talk about how much value they can get from having that at a hackathon. Like I mentioned, a tier list, you want to kind of have different strata for your sponsors. And each of those sponsorship tiers have different kind of rewards, you could say. One might be you get your name on the back of the shirt. One might be you get a prize category. One might be like we have for Mantech, it says presented by Mantech on all of our slides because that's the tier list that they chose. And that's one of the things that comes with it. So you give those options to the company, and then they can also tinker with them. You kind of have prices for each thing, and you can move up around. And the last one, and probably the most important when it comes to contacting sponsors, besides sending emails out to everybody, following up with those emails, because it's really easy for random outreach or recruiter to get an email, one of 100 emails lost in their inbox any given day of the week. So follow up like after a week or 2 weeks or something like that, a reasonable amount of time. So you're respectful. You don't want to spam them, but you want to follow up and keep your event's name in the back of their mind. So when they're in that meeting with their boss and their boss is like, hey, we're looking for events to sponsor, your name is already in their head and they're thinking about it right away. That's really the goal, is you just want to be that annoying little mosquito in their ear that eventually they'll turn and they'll try to slap. It's not a great analogy, but really you just want to keep bringing attention to yourself. Eventually somebody will bite and it'll work out. So that's really all I have for sponsorship. And that's kind of all I have for the different division of labor, I guess, within our team. If anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But otherwise, I'm going to move forward to actually holding meetings. These are what I call the 4 A's of meetings. Agenda, advertise, attendance, accommodate. It's really corny. It's dumb, but it works. First one, agenda. Don't just go into a meeting with don't know what you're talking about. Like the day before your meeting, set up some meeting notes. Review what you talked about last week. Set up some action items for this week for different committees. And then during the meeting, take notes. Write down what people talk about. Write down the different things that people are discussing. Like we noticed that logistics and sponsorship was having a clash over this thing. We're going to revisit it next week, whatever it might be. You want to have a written record of everything that happens. So that way, when you forget about it, inevitably, because of that test you have on Thursday, when the next meeting runs around, you can just look at the meeting notes from last week and say, oh, this is what we need to talk about. So it's Sunday, you can make sure you get things done. It also gives you a written record for keeping people accountable, making sure that people are doing the jobs that they're supposed to. And if not, figuring out why. Don't come down as like whoa, why aren't you doing your job? Because we're all students. We all have class. We all have things to do. So more often than not, somebody's not doing it because they're being malicious. They're doing it because they had 3 tests that week. But really what matters there is communication. Reach out to people. You can look at your agenda and say, hey, this is I haven't heard anything about this all week. Let me shoot this person a message on Discord, see what's going on and see if we can fix it. The second one is advertise. And this is both a component of team building when you're trying to get people to join your team, and also team retention when you're trying to mold that team and get it to mesh, and also keep people around and keep people from leaving midway through the year. You want to keep relentlessly talking about that. Hey, if you have friends who are interested in joining our team, send them a link. We have plenty of people on the team who are only on the team because friends invited them, and maybe more than invited, maybe kind of force them to, get them to get their friends to show up. That's the easiest way to do it. Advertise at your career, not your career fairs, but like your club fairs, we always go out at Gobbler Fest here at Tech and we say, hey, not only are we looking for people to pre-register for our event, we also want people to become a part of our organization team. And so that's on the one half. The other side of advertising, you want to keep people up to date of saying like, hey, reminder, we have a meeting coming. Don't forget, meeting Sunday, keep repeating it. And so there's no way that they can forget and that they're aware of what's going on. Attendance, as silly as it sounds, you do want to attract meeting attendance. Not only meeting attendance, but also just presence in like your online, whatever communication platform you use. We use Discord, whatever it might be. You might use Slack, Microsoft Teams, whatever you're using. You want to keep track of kind of participation in those sorts of things. It makes your life easier when you're trying to make tough decisions about assigning really critical roles to people. If you have to get this food order in by Wednesday, you want to go to the person who you know has been coming to meetings regularly, has been engaged and active, and you know can get the job done in time. That's what you're looking for with attendance, and attendance is a really easy way to kind of quantify that value. Finally, accommodate. You know, we all have lives, like I said, we all have tests going on. A lot of us are CS majors. It's not an easy major by any stretch of the imagination. So accommodate people for when they have those rough weeks, because everybody during this semester has those couple of rough weeks. But be clear that when those rough weeks come up, you need to know when they're coming up so you can divert and you can have other people do work and pick up the slack. Really, the core of the team is built around communication. There's 4 A's, but there's a C at the middle, and the C is communication. I just thought of that off the top of my head, but I'm going to use it from now on. The C, and there's a C in the middle, and it's for communication, because all of these things don't work if you don't communicate with your team and your team doesn't communicate with you. So you have to make sure that they're comfortable telling you things that you might not want to hear. You have to make sure that your team is comfortable telling you, hey, our shirts aren't going to get here until the day of the event, or hey, this sponsor who was supposed to be here dropped out a week before our event started. Now we're missing money that should be there. Your team has to be comfortable communicating with you so that you can move forward together. If your team is afraid that you're going to yell at them or something like that, or they just don't feel like you need to know the information, that is a recipe for disaster of epic proportions. So really, as there's 4 A's, you can have an agenda, you can advertise your meetings, you can track attendance, you can accommodate people when they have those rough weeks. But really, if you don't communicate, none of those matter. Communication is really at the core of what keeps an event together. Next up is organization. We use Google Drive for all of our file management stuff besides our website. That's GitHub, obviously. But keeping the drive clean is really an easy thing to do, but it makes your life so easy on the day of the event when you're trying to find a file and you know exactly where it is because everything is organized. I have here a picture of ours. This is what our drive looks like. We have probably more folders than we need. We could condense these down. This makes it so that when the day of comes, we can say, oh, I'm looking for the judging spreadsheet. I know exactly where that is. I'm looking for a particular graphic. I go into the subfolder. I can find it. I'm looking for a post we need to make. I can find it. It's good to go. I'm looking for a workshop list. I know where that is. I'm looking for an MLH application or MLH contact. I can go to that folder and find it all within 2 or 3 clicks. That's really the goal. You want to be able to find information as fast as possible and efficiently as you can, because no one wants to waste time searching through a Google Drive and just digging through trash, basically. Keep your file system clean. If you make a copy of something and you're not using one of the copies anymore, delete the other copy. Don't let stuff just sit around, and don't ever put things in this outer like area. That's my recommendation. If you have something important, make a folder for it. It's better to have it in a folder than just sitting out there as a random spreadsheet, because like that, there's that saying about a broken window where it's a sign that things are just going kind of to crap. Having random files spread out all over the place is just a sign that things are going to crap, because if it's okay for one file, it's okay for another file, and then another file, and another file. And then pretty soon you have all these files you have all these folders that are empty, and you have 300 files all in one folder, all mismanaged, and a nightmare to try to get through on the day of. So yeah, that's pretty much my organization in a nutshell. That was a lot of information. This is finally just kind of some final information about our event, like kind of this is how much our event cost. Oops, I didn't change the slide. Here we go. It's just some stats about our event. There's kind of our budget. That's how many people we had here. And regardless of whether everything goes right or everything goes wrong during your event, if the event happens, it is a success. I'm telling you, and that's something that I've had to take to heart, because there is going to be setbacks, there is going to be hiccups, there is going to be weird stuff that happens that you cannot plan for during your event. But you have to recognize that you're putting on an event for people to have fun. And if people are having fun, even if it's not the way that you dreamed in your wildest imagination, if people are having fun, that event's a success. Because ultimately, we're here to learn, we're here to do all that, but it should be a fun process. And if it's not fun, you're doing it wrong. Yeah, again, thanks for listening. This was kind of ranting, so I apologize for the kind of disparate, disjointed nature of this. If you have questions, reach out to me. That's my email. You can find me on Discord. I'm the guy with the fish icon. I'll be talking at closing tomorrow. If you're here in person, feel free to stop by and say hi after closing ceremonies. I'd be more than happy to talk to you. And that's all I have. So thank you very much. So we have a question here that says, VT Hacks is pretty well known. What would you recommend a new hackathon so they can get discovered? This is a great question, and it's something we still struggle with. Definitely. We might be a well-known event, but there's definitely events that are bigger than us. And there's definitely events that we have to compete with for people to come to. So really the first place to start is at your school. If you're attending a school, that's where you're going to find the biggest source of people to come to your event, because it's a lot easier for somebody to walk across the drill field here at Tech and show up rather than have to come all the way from Pennsylvania or somewhere else across the country to your event. It's a lot easier to make that 5-minute trip than a 5-hour trip. So start as close as you can to your home location and then slowly expand your way out. For us, that means starting with Tech students. The majority, I think a decent majority of our participants are Virginia Tech students. And then the next majorities are a lot of Virginia schools. So we have schools like James Madison, George Mason, UVA, William and Mary, all these kinds of schools that are within reasonable driving distance. That's the next place to look. Kind of start from a small ring and expand your way out. Look for counselors, look for advisors for CS department, for your computer engineering departments, your electrical engineering departments, even like your fintech kind of finance style advisors. Reach out to those advisors, because more often than not, they'll be willing to pass on your little blurb and your graphic onto their students. And because it's a great opportunity for them to build experience and get exposure to a competitive atmosphere. So start small, build out from there, reach out to advisors, see if you can find listservs for students, like see if you have access to like a list of emails for every CS student at a particular school. Usually you can't, but the advisor is a great way to be able to get that, and then they can pass it on to all the students there. So hopefully that helped a little bit. If there's any other things you wanted to clarify there, just type them out in the chat. Yeah, I think that's it. This is going to be recorded. I'm going to throw this up on the YouTube if anybody wants to watch it. But thank you all very much for listening. And I hope you guys are able to spend the last 7.5 hours or so working on your projects. And I'm excited to see what you guys turn in. Thank you so much.